investor education and protections. So if we go to the answer of this question is here that an informed investor is more precious than the investment. So an informed investor is basically more precious than the investments. Here the investors provides much more capital which combines with entrepreneur skill and results in successful corporate. So but definitely if there is investors which provides capital that is needed by that organization, that basically results into a successful corporate, and this corporate provides goods and services, taxes and employment, and fuel economic growth. Therefore, it is important that investors are educated, enlightened and well informed to be able to take sound investment decisions and to protect their interest. Now, recognizing the importance of shareholders' rights and investor protection, the Companies Act 2013 basically introduced some important changes to the company law regime in India and has plugged many loopholes and uphold shareholders' democracy and investors' protection fund in many ways. A significant development has been the inclusion pertaining to class action suit section 245, which deals with class action suit to strengthen the concept of shareholders democracy. Now here the ICSI as a national body. It's a national body and its members are as a corporate governance professionals have played a significant role in the area of education protection funds. So the role of the company secretary is to also increase in the development of educational investors, educational protection laws. So the glimpse of the role of company secretaries are basically under the securities law as Securities Contract Regulation Act, Depository Act, regulation and guidelines issued by the SEBI under the SEBI Act also, and the authority have made provisions relating to investor education protection. Now the company secretary has an important role in ensuring compliance with all of these provisions, and under various other laws like equity, debt listing, IDR, also company secretaries have been recognized to verify compliances and to issue certificates to the companies. And a better regulated capital market automatically brings development for the country, and a strong circulated capital market instill confidence among the investors and that their money is safe. Now the company secretaries are expected to exercise sensitive professional and moral judgment in all their activities while carrying out their professional responsibility. Now they should accept the obligation to act in a way that will serve public interest, honor public trust and demonstrate commitment to professionalism. Now the company secretaries are also expected to maintain and broaden public confidence and perform all professional responsibility with the highest sense of integrity. We have another question that is related to documentation. That is, what do you mean by good documentation, and what is the examples of good documentation practices as well as poor documentation practices? So good document and poor document, we need to discuss about all such. Here, if we talk about that, the term documentation basically includes written and electronic records and also audio, visual tapes, emails, face miles and also smileys, and also image, photographs, charts, checks, list, communication logs, management reports, incident reports, working notes, or any other type of documentation that is required, and report, incident reports, working notes, or any other type of other documentation. Now the documentation, a good documentation basically promote good corporate governance practice and compliance level of a company, and also it improves the communication and dissemination of information between various other stakeholders. And these guiding principles support professionals, employers, policymakers and managers in assessment and planning, execution and evaluation. Also the good documentation practice and the policies demonstrate the professional obligation, accountability, and legal requirement to communicate and record client information, and a good secretarial practice. Now, examples of the good documentation practice here are that the following are the good examples. Basically, the records that are completed at time of activity or when the action has taken. So here the first point is that records that are completed at time of the activity when that action has taken. Also, superseded documents retained for a specific period of time. Also, it has to be concise, legible, accurate, traceable. Also, picture is worth 1,000 words. Also, it has to be clear examples, and do not assume knowledge. If we talk about bad or poor document, that are the documents, examples of a poor document. It's a document with error, correction, not signed dated, and did not include a reason for the correction, and also write-overs, multiple lines through and use of words whiteout or other masking device. Now, recording of the event is not a sequence and tabled, and also standards of reporting procedure as adopted by the professional is not authorized. So the delegation of work is not recorded, documented. So out of the specific procedure not detailed enough, and also the flow chart and the checklist is not available. So these all are some examples of the poor documents we have read so far. So here is the question, which is like James and Company has listed a securitized debt instrument at a stock exchange, and one of the director has asked you, being a compliance officer of the company, to inform the obligations of the company regarding its securitized debt instrument, and we need to describe the compliance that are need to be maintained as per the LOTR. So we know that there are various compliances which are need to be maintained as per the SEBI LOTR regulations. So the obligation of the company and SEBI regulation of the listed company related to the securities debt instrument are here: issue new securities. If we issue new security as per regulation 82, here prior issue of new securitized debt instrument, we need to intimate stock exchange of its intention to issue new securitized debt instruments either through a public issue or also through the private placement basis, and if it proposes to list such private placed debt securities on the stock exchanges prior to issuing the such securities. Now, intimation, that is at least 2 working days before the board meeting, excluding the date of intimation and date of the meeting. So we need to give 2 days notice advance. We need to intimate to the stock exchanges at least 2 days working in advance, excluding the date on which the intimation and the date of meeting regarding its board meeting of the trustee, at which the recommendation of declaration of the issue of securitized debt instrument or any other matter affecting the right or interest of the shareholders of securitized instrument is proposed to be considered. Also, financial information, we need to inform to the SEBI as per regulation 82 that within 7 days from the end of the month, actual payment date on monthly basis. So we need to inform to the SEBI within 7 days from the end of the month, within 7 days from the end of the month, actual payment dated on monthly basis. So here it shall be submit such statement, report or information including financial information pertaining to the scheme to stock exchanges within 7 days from the end of the month actual payment date, and either by itself or through the services or a monthly basis in the format as specified by SEBI from time to time, provided that where periodicity of this receivable is not monthly, reporting shall be made for the relevant periods. Now, record date as per regulation 87 sub-regulation 2, that at least 7 working days before 7 working days before the record date, excluding the date of intimation. So it shall give notice in advance of at least 7 working days, excluding the date of intimation, and also the record date to the SEBI of the record date, or as many date stock exchanges may agree to require specifying the purpose of the record date. Now, if we are discussing, that is part 2, that is related to due diligence. So here, the series of financial crimes and fraud, it is related to compliance. The series of financial crimes and frauds by some of its employees is alleged by the company, and it is desired to gather legally tenable evidence and to fix the negligence and responsibility within the company. So we need to take into account court of law and what type of audit in this case. We know that forensic audit shall be appropriate audit in the given situation. When the series of financial crimes and fraud by the employees, then we need to go for the forensic audit. So forensic audit is to be appropriate in the given situation, and forensic audit, as we know, that it is a dynamic and strategic tool in combating corruption, also financial crimes and frauds through investigations and also to resolving allegations of frauds and embezzlement, and it may be conducted to determine negligence. Now, forensic audit is basically, it is an application of science to crime concern. Now, forensic science is a science which is applied to legal matter, especially criminal matter. So it is a science which is applied to legal matters if we call about criminal matter specifically. Now, due to the recent corporate accounting scandals at various corporate forensic auditing, corporate forensic audited gain tremendous significance in detecting fraud and that it may prevail in the companies. Now, the term forensic audit, we know that it refers to the specific guidance carried out in order to produce evidence. Now, the forensic audit task involves an investigation into financial affairs of the entity, and it is often associated with the investigation into the alleged fraudulent activity. Now, the objective of forensic auditing is relate to the finding of audit by examining and gathering legally tenable evidence, and it need to produce it to the court. And in the process of the corporate will is lifted in case of the corporate entities to identify the fraud, the person responsible for it. So in this process, corporate will concept can also be introduced, and forensic audit involves application of audit skills to legally determine whether fraud has actually occurred, and the entire process include planning, gathering evidence, reviewing the evidence, and also reporting the same. And now, in the aim of the naming person involved in the fraud within the view to take legal actions. So here, forensic audit report is basically the statement of observation gathered and it considered while proving conclusive evidence. So it is a medium through which an auditor expresses its opinion, and it is basically the medium through which an auditor expresses his opinion after forensic audit investigation is completed. So forensic audit is basically the comprehensive and systematic process that involves a series of activities and tasks undertaken for establishing the accuracy and authenticity of the transactions under review. So therefore, forensic audit is suggested in the case. So now we have another question, that how do we monitor and evaluate of effectiveness of the organization's risk management process? So how do we monitor and also evaluate about the internal audit, that is it effective, and we have evaluated it. So we have internal audit professional standards that requires the functions to monitor, evaluate and effectiveness of the organization's risk management process. So generally we know that the risk falls under the strategic, operational, financial reporting and legal regulatory categories. Now, management performs risk assessment activities are the part of ordinary course of the business in each of these categories. Now, the example includes strategic planning, marketing planning, capital planning, budgeting, hedging, incentive payout structures, and credit lending practices. Also, internal audit functions monitors, evaluate, and report these risks timely, enabling the organization to take corrective measure in time. And also it disclosures corporate legal advisors often prepares comprehensive assessment of the current and potential litigation of a company faces. Now the internal auditor may evaluate each of these activities. So an internal auditor may evaluate each of these activities or focus on the process used by the management to report and to monitor risk identified. Now the examples are that internal auditor can advise management regarding the reporting of the forward-looking operating measures to the board, and also to help identify emerging risks. Now we have another question that need to be discussed, that is, we need to explain that how the compliance specified in the regulation 24A regarding applicability of the secretarial audit under the SEBI list LOTR. So what all are the compliances according to regulation 24A? So this question, this paper is equally important, and you will get answer of corporate funding. Like regulation 24A of the SEBI LOTR disclosure requirement. Here, every listed company and material unlisted subsidiary incorporated in India has to undertake secretarial audit and has to annex its annual report, a secretarial audit report given by the company secretary in practice. So every listed company or every material unlisted subsidiary has to undertake secretarial audit and has to annex with its annual report a secretarial audit report, and given by the company secretary in practice in such a form as may be prescribed with effect from March. Now the listing entity, as we know, that the company which is listed on the recognized stock exchange or any of the above stock exchange with its designated securities by it or designated securities issued under the scheme managed by it in accordance with the listed agreement entered into between the entity and the recognized stock exchanges. Now material subsidiary, we know that means a subsidiary whose income or net worth exceed 10% of the consolidated income or net worth respectively of the listed entity and its subsidiary in the immediately preceding accounting year. If we talk about exemption from regulation 24A, that means regulation 15 of SEBI LOTR regulation provides for the applicability of these regulations to chapter 4. Here, obligation of listed entity which has listed its specified securities, regulation 15(2) of the said regulation exempt few entities from the applicability of the regulation 24A. Now, as per the regulation 15 of the said regulation, we know that the compliance specified in the regulation 24 shall not apply in respect of listing entity whose have a paid up equity share capital does not exceed 10 crore rupees or net worth is not existing 25 crore rupees as on the last year of the previous financial year, and also the listed entity which has listed its specified securities on the SME exchange. However, in the case of other listed entities which are not companies but are the body corporate are subjected to regulation under the statute, and provisions of the regulation 24A shall apply to the extent that it does not violate their respective statutes and guidelines for directive issued by the relevant authorities. Now we have EOM, that is emphasize on matters. We need to highlight the inclusion of emphasize of matters in the audit report. So what does it mean? So here, emphasize on matters, basically it includes the audit report to seek the attention of the readers and also to make the readers aware about the specific instance which are not in the general course of the business. So such matters can have a positive as well as negative impact on the affairs of the company in future. So for the purpose of EOM, that is emphasis on matter, is paragraph is basically to draw the attention to a matter that already disclosed by the auditor believes that it is fundamental to their understanding and should be a part of the report. So here are the examples of the matters which should be considered as emphasis of a matter. So here, uncertainty relating to the future outcome of exceptional litigation or regulatory actions, and also when there is uncertainty about exceptional future events pending litigations. So early adoption of new accounting standards, also adoption of new technology, also recent changes in regulatory framework environment, also when the major catastrophe has had major effect on the financial position, So ideally, these such matters should be the part of the director's report or management discussion and analyze report prepared by the company. If the same is not disclosed by the company in the director's report or the management discussion analysis report, the auditor may opt to place the same in the auditor's report. So what all are the examples that are to be considered as emphasis of matter? The emphasis of matter, there are few examples which we have discussed, and I'm reading it again, that an uncertainty relating to the future outcome of exceptional litigation or regulatory actions. Also, when there is uncertainty about exceptional future events, that is pending litigations. Also, early adoption of new accounting standards. Also, adoption of new technology, recent changes in the regulatory environment, and the major catastrophe has had a major effect on the financial position of the organization. So now we are moving to another question, that is, what does it mean about the working paper that need to be prepared using the appropriate cross-referencing justify? So we need to justify about the working paper that should be prepared, and what does it mean? Working paper that should be prepared using appropriate cross-referencing. Cross-referencing from the audit procedure to the primary working paper provides a reference to or from the paper was performed. That is, it is not necessary to cross-refer all the papers of the audit procedure, but only the primary work paper should be cross-referred. That is, the primary work paper will then contain cross-referencing to other and supporting working papers which provide additional information regarding the audit procedure, performed, results, and conclusion reached. Now the cross-reference should also be used and to refer information usual in more than one place to the other relevant information, including the source of information, composition of summary total or other documents or example of the transactions. Now to encourage conciseness of the documents information, only single copy of the working papers should be placed in working file for cross-referencing. So we have a question, that is conflict of interest. So conflict of interest as per the audit engagement. Just give me 2 seconds. Yes, बताइए. हाँ बताइए. हाँ बताइए. नहीं. अच्छा ठीक है. So we need to check out that conflict of interest regarding audit engagement as per the CS standards. So here, conflict of interest, we know that as per the accounting standards, the auditor shall not have any substantial confidential interest with the auditee. So any conflict of interest other than substantial conflict of interest must be disclosed by the auditor before accepting audit engagement as soon as the auditor become aware of the same, as the case may be. So any other confidential interest other than substantial confidential interest has to be disclosed by the auditor to the company as per the audit engagement when he got to know about the same. Conflict of interest as per the CS means ownership. When the auditor singly or along with the partner, spouse, parent, sibling and child of such person of the spouse, we will discuss later on.